Well, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with the columnist for the article, Ali Miraj, and the UK economy reporter for Bloomberg, Lizzy Burden. There they both are. Before we get to them, let's see what's on some of those front pages. The Observer leads with ministers vowing to ensure trust in the BBC is restored in the wake of the controversy over how Martin Bashir's famous interview with Princess Diana was obtained. The Mirror hears from angry members of Michael Jackson's family. The late singer was famously interviewed by Mr. Bashir in 2003. Meanwhile, The Telegraph reports scientists working for Public Health England have found that 2 doses of the Pfizer or AstraZeneca vaccines are highly effective in guarding against the Indian COVID variant. It's also the Sunday People's Big Splash. Their headline, "Vaccines do work on variants." And that's also the top story for the Mail on Sunday. There it is. The Sunday Express leads on that story too, saying we're on course for Freedom Day, June the 21st. And the big story for the Sunday Times, the allegation by the Prime Minister's former chief advisor, Dominic Cummings, that the government was secretly pursuing a strategy of herd immunity against the virus last autumn. Right, well, we're joined tonight by Ali Miraj and Lizzy Burden. As I was saying, good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Right, let's start with the Times and this interview by Martin Bashir. Ali, we'll go to you first. I mean, this is who everyone wanted to hear from. His first in-depth thoughts, really, since that report came out. Ali, what do you make of it?
Well, Kimberley, this is a fight back from Martin Bashir, because we know that Earl Spencer in the last day has said that he draws a direct line between the interview that Martin Bashir secured with his sister under false pretenses by forging those bank statements, as we know, that made her feel paranoid and agree to this interview, and her death 2 years later. So that's Earl Spencer's position. And he's also called for a police investigation into the matter. Bashir's come back and basically said that he didn't make Diana do anything she didn't want to do. She wanted to talk to him, and indeed that they became very good friends. And you can see in the Times there that Diana actually attended the birth of Bashir's 3rd child, and they were exchanging letters and they became very close. That's as maybe, but Bashir obviously is trying to deflect blame from himself, and it may very well be the case that Diana would have given an interview anyway. What was not the case, though, was that he had to procure that under false pretenses and make a very vulnerable woman in a difficult position already feel completely at risk for her life and paranoid about those closest to her were betraying her. So he didn't have to do that at all. I think the BBC's got some real questions to answer.
Because in the interview, they say he cannot quite bring himself to admit that he wronged the princess. Lizzy, I'll just read an excerpt. "I can understand the motivation of Earl Spencer's comments, but to channel the tragedy, the difficult relationship between the royal family and the media purely onto my shoulders feels a little unreasonable. The suggestion I am singularly responsible, I think, is unreasonable and unfair." I mean, Lizzy, what do you make of what he said?
Yeah, he seems to think that he's redeemed himself since that interview. He says he was only 32 at the time. He thinks he's redeemed himself through his later work at the BBC. He can't seem to understand that, part of the outrage is that he was even given a second chance at the BBC. We've had Lord Hall stepping down from the National Gallery today, partly because he gave Bashir that second chance. Yes, he says that Diana was happy with the interview, but it is difficult to lay all the blame at Bashir's feet, all the blame at the BBC's feet. There's clearly a wider problem in journalism. This was supposed to be the scoop of the decade, but you can't be having scoops at any cost. There's clearly a problem with the fetishization of scoops if people are going to this length to get them.
Because it was all about the forged bank statements, and we'll get to the political pressure on the corporation in a moment. But it was about these forged bank statements. In the interview, he says, listen, I'd met her before we presented these bank statements to her. But Ali, as you said, it was more than just showing her some forged bank statement, wasn't it? It was feeding into this sense of paranoia that her son spoke of.
Indeed, and Prince William spoke very eloquently and gave a very heartfelt account of himself, of his view of the whole matter, and actually was very balanced in his statement, saying that he thought that actually it led to the breakdown of his parents' relationship in the end, and also that a public service broadcaster, it's a very important role to play in society, but should not be engaging in these kinds of acts. And that's something that the BBC has to really look at very, very carefully. I mean, it's certainly the case that following Prince Charles's own interview with Jonathan Dimbleby the year before, it was likely that Diana would want to give her side of the story. But procuring it in this manner for a public service broadcaster is really beyond the pale. And you've had, as Lizzy has said, Lord Hall has stood down. The question is, why did Lord Hall exonerate Bashir at the time of the initial investigation, which he carried out, and then hired him again in 2016 to be covering religious affairs, and then indeed promoted him to religious affairs editor? And the person who I think is conspicuous by his absence in all this is Lord Burt, who was the Director General of the BBC at the time. We haven't heard anything from Lord Burt on this matter at all. And I do think it's important for him to come forward. And I also think it's important for the BBC to really clean up its culture. We already had the issue back in 2011 where the programme about Jimmy Savile was not aired on Newsnight. It was pulled by BBC management, and that created a complete and utter fiasco. So there is a cultural issue here. I don't think it should be blown out of proportion that the BBC should be disbanded. I don't think that's sensible. But certainly there's an issue in terms of, when it comes to Bashir, the short-term reward of having this prized interview with Diana really did not outweigh the long-term risk that not only his own reputation, but that of his employer.
And let's look at the Sunday Telegraph, because they say BBC is one lapse from bringing the whole house down. And Ali, you mentioned Jimmy Savile there. It does seem, you could argue, that they do have these problems. They then have very public independent inquiries, very public apologies, and then they seem to get on quietly with exactly how they were operating before. They've got a review, a quarterly review coming up on the Charter. Do you think that they can go into that without a lot of change coming due to what's happened? Lizzy?
In a word, no. After Prince William's statement yesterday, it seems to really have underlined the severity of this situation. We've had Lord McAlpine, Jimmy Savile, Rolf Harris, Iraq. It really doesn't seem to be the case that this could be swept away with a "okay, we'll do better next time." But it's really no surprise that all the papers are piling on for yet another day onto the BBC about this. They've been frustrated for years that the BBC's offering news on its website for free and competing with them, especially to the detriment of the local press, which, arguably is to the detriment of British democracy. So, it's no surprise that the papers are fanning this fire for yet another day.
Ministers are expected, according to The Observer, their headline, "We must act to tackle appalling failures at BBC, warn ministers." And they're saying that they are expected to be called to the House of Commons ministers tomorrow to answer questions from MPs about the crisis. Ali, that's going to be very interesting, isn't it? Excuse me, Monday. Obviously, this is the Sunday papers.
I think certainly, I went to the supermarket today to get some popcorn. That'll be an interesting moment to watch.
Was that for Eurovision or for this?
Well, indeed, it could be for both. It could be where everyone's watching us, not Eurovision.
Of course.
So, look, I think Lord Grade, again, former Director General of the BBC, has come out and said that there should be an independent board that deals with complaints at the BBC. So he's making that particular point, and that's going to be looked at by ministers. There's a midterm review coming up next year for the BBC before the, again, ongoing discussions about the BBC's funding model and the renewal of its charter more broadly. And the BBC at the moment is actually under new management. So there's Tim Davie, who's the new Director General, who seems to be quite proactive. And to be fair to him, was very open in calling for this investigation to be done in the first place by Lord Dyson, which found this, and seems to be wanting to, deal with things and get the BBC on the right track. And also Richard Sharp, who's the new chairman, who's very close to the government and clearly would want to get things back on track for the BBC as well. So I do think there's a a glimmer of hope here, but it's obviously a very serious situation that the BBC's in, and it really doesn't want to be picking fights with a future King of England.
OK. Ali, Lizzy, we're going to take a quick break. Grab a cuppa and we will be back, because coming up, promising news on the effectiveness of vaccines against the Indian variant. We'll discuss that next.
This is all about helping other people and inspiring others to take on challenges. Mark's charity is about providing practical help and physical challenges. So for Mark, this really is an opportunity.
I mean, well, my personal speak, it's aphasia. I can't speak. It's the words. It's tricky, but it's it's a tricky place.
So if we go back a little bit to when Mark first had his stroke, he was told quite categorically very early on that he would never walk again, and it is this internal determination that's all part of commando training, really. Some of those words that you'll hear: courage, determination, cheerfulness under adversity. What Mark's trying to do here is inspire others to an unrelenting pursuit of recovery, and this is absolutely what Mark's charity is all about. It's about reaching out to others and inspiring them to do things like this. Maybe if we just go back a little bit to when Mark was going through his recovery, he went to Headley Court, which is the military rehabilitation centre, and it's my belief from all the conversations that I've had with Mark, is this is really where the Bowra Foundation was established. Mark will always remind me of a gentleman who was in a bed next door to him, who he said, had literally given up hope, and this is about Mark saying, do you know what? Please, please, please don't give hope. Don't give up hope. Come with me. I can show you. I can inspire you. I can sprinkle some of that military pixie dust over you and help you with your recovery. This is the icing on the cake. This is the finale of last year's Bowra 1000, to actually get onto the summits of these three mountains and just demonstrate to people that, despite all of the challenges, you can actually, surpass it, and you can reach these limits.
For the early risers.
As we examine the story beyond the headline.
For the knowledge seekers.
Welcome to Divided States.
For the straight talkers, the curious, and the ones who want to be entertained.
Backstage, Sky News' entertainment podcast.
For wherever you are.
Welcome to Sophie Ridge on Sunday podcast.
For the ones who want to know more.
Welcome to the All Out Politics podcast.
For the listeners.
From Sky News Storycast.
Sky News Podcasts. Listen and subscribe for free.
Welcome back. You're watching the press preview. With me now, Ali Miraj and Lizzy Burden. Hello to you both again. Now, this is exciting news. Lizzy, let's start with the people, because vaccines do work on variants. It's a Public Health England study. It broke today. Just tell us a bit more.
Yeah, so it's really encouraging news from government scientists that 2 doses of the Pfizer or AstraZeneca jabs are nearly as effective against the variant that originated in India as against the Kent strain, but you've got to have 2 jabs. So, it is great news. We've had all these horrible reports about people in India having to have their eyeballs removed because of the black fungus to do with the variant that started in India. And the papers are really encouraged about this because the government government said that it means hopefully they won't have to delay the reopening of the economy on the 21st of June, so we can hopefully get back to normal as planned. The Sunday Express is saying we're on course for Freedom Day. So, it's great news, not just because of the vaccine, but also for the reopening.
Ali, the Health Secretary has said that he's increasingly confident that we are on track for the roadmap. And it is interesting because throughout all of this, we saw the easing of restrictions, but then with the Indian variant, it did kind of feel that we were back before Christmas, didn't it? But we have the vaccines now, and this proves that we've got a two-pronged attack.
I think that's right, Kimberley. And only until a few days ago, the Prime Minister was being fairly cautious about the reopening. I mean, he was always saying that he would be driven by data, not dates. And the government's got 4 tests that it's got to meet on hospitalization rates, vaccine rollouts, etc., and new variants. So these are all the things it's got to take into account. But things are moving in the right direction. I mean, 88% effectiveness against Indian variants of Pfizer and over 60% of AstraZeneca is excellent. So that's extremely encouraging. And Boris Johnson knows that in the past he's been under some pressure from elements of his backbenchers, particularly the COVID recovery group, who have really said that June 21 is his effective Brexit day, a bit like the one that Theresa May had to keep pushing back. And if he doesn't open on June the 21st, that could be the end of his premiership, which I think is a little bit over-egging it. But it is an important day, and I think things are moving in the right direction. I think the R rate going up a little bit, but at the moment, the hospitalization rate is not going up, which is the positive thing.
That's key, isn't it? And the fact that the people who are sick, Lizzy, are the ones who haven't, they're eligible for the vaccine, but they just haven't been getting it.
Yeah, I mean, they're lowering the ages of who can actually get the vaccine. It's down to 32 now. Funny, there are stories from the US about innovative ways to encourage Americans to get the vaccine, about pairing up with dating apps with the government. To a way to incentivize young people could be to show their vaccinated status on Tinder. I don't know if that could work here or if it'll even be suggested, but yeah, it's a problem. You can have the most successful vaccine you want, but you need the people to take it.
OK. Lizzy, Ali, thank you so much.